You were not created to beg for love, compromise your worth, or shrink to fit into places that insult your destiny. You are not a mistake. You are not a shadow. You are not someone's afterthought. You are the deliberate divine idea of God expressed through flesh. And until you detach your identity from things and people who were never assigned to define you, you will continue to live beneath your purpose and forfeit the joy that was meant to be yours. My dear sisters, I want you to understand this one truth. God does not manufacture failure. Everything God created, He created to succeed, and that includes you. But success is never automatic. It is governed by principles, and so is happiness. These are not emotions you stumble into. They are conditions produced by alignment. Alignment with God. The enemy of your soul does not fear your beauty. He fears your clarity. He fears your confidence. He fears your ability to detach from what is not your assignment. Because the moment you become emotionally free from what God never sent, you become dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. There is a dangerous attitude that many women carry. This need for validation, this desire to be seen, liked, affirmed by people who don't even know who they are. You wear the right clothes, say the right things, act the right way just to be approved. And when the approval doesn't come, you question your value. But let me remind you, God approved you before anyone knew your name. If you seek applause from man, you will always be in emotional debt. But if you stand on divine validation, you'll walk in power even when the room is silent. Some of you are blocked, not because of what's around you, but because of what you refuse to release. That betrayal, that heartbreak, that moment they lied, that season they walked away. But hear me today, forgiveness is not for them. It is for your freedom. You cannot fly while dragging corpses from yesterday. Bitterness is an invisible chain, and God cannot pour fresh oil into a contaminated vessel. You must cleanse your soul so that joy can find a home again. Comparison is the thief of destiny. When you measure yourself by other women, you insult the creativity of God. God does not do duplicates. You are the only version of you that will ever exist. So why compete with what was never meant to be your mirror? Instead of scrolling and envying, study and evolve. Instead of criticizing her blessing, cultivate your garden. Her season is not your delay. Celebrate her and prepare for your. Another trap is the fear of being alone. I see so many women lower their standards because they're tired of waiting. They choose men not sent by God just to fill the silence, but hear this. Loneliness is not the absence of people, it's the absence of purpose. If you are full of purpose, solitude becomes your sanctuary. It is in the stillness that God prepares the woman for the next season. Don't let your desire for company rob you of divine timing. Many women lose themselves in roles. You become so attached to being a mother, a wife, a worker that you forget to be you. And when those roles shift, you fall apart. Why? Because your identity was rooted in function, not in essence. But when your identity is in God, roles may change, but your foundation remains. You are not just what you do. You are who He said you are. One of the most deceptive attitudes is the need to please people. You compromise what you believe, say yes when you mean no, and trade your peace for temporary approval. But anything you compromise to get, you will eventually lose. Stop watering dead connections just to be liked. Emotional slavery is not God's will for your life. The fear of man is a trap, but the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Finally, there is a silent battle that many women carry, a wound from a father who was absent, silent, or harsh. And so you grow up with a gap, trying to fill it with relationships, achievements, and attention. But hear me, your heavenly Father never abandoned you. You are not rejected, you are redirected. Let God heal the father wound so you stop bleeding on people who didn't cut you. Restoration is not in the arms of a man. It's in the presence of the one who made you. Until you detach from what is not yours, you cannot be free for what is. You are not here to chase love, you are here to become it. You are not here to earn worth, you are here to express it. And until you understand that freedom is not rebellion, it's alignment, you will remain in cycles that drain you. God is calling you higher. He is calling you to detach, not in bitterness, but in boldness, not in pride, but in purpose. Let go of what broke you. Step into who He made you, because your future is not behind you. It is waiting for the healed, whole, and powerful version of you to rise. When a woman depends on external validation to feel worthy, she has unknowingly surrendered the authority of her identity to the opinions of others. This dependency creates a cycle of emotional instability because the approval of man is inconsistent, fleeting, and often rooted in their own brokenness. When people like her, she feels valuable. When they ignore her, she feels invisible. This is not how God intended her to live. She was never meant to be a prisoner of compliments or a hostage to opinions. Her worth is not a democratic vote. It was established in eternity before she was ever formed in her mother's womb. The danger of seeking validation externally is that it detaches her from the original blueprint of who she truly is in the eyes of her Creator. When a woman does not know who she is, she will allow others to tell her who she should be. And when that happens, she begins to perform. She becomes a version of herself that is palatable, acceptable, pleasing, but not authentic. The more she performs, the further she drifts from purpose. She begins to attach her identity to achievements, appearance, relationships, or status, all of which are unstable foundations. So when the applause stops, when the relationship ends, when the attention fades, she collapses emotionally because her worth was built on sand. But true confidence is born when a woman stops seeking mirrors in people and starts seeing her reflection in God. It is in that divine mirror that she realizes she is already accepted, already loved, already complete. Detachment from external validation does not make her arrogant. It makes her free. Free to live without pretending. Free to walk in rooms without needing to be noticed. Free to pursue purpose, not popularity. And in that freedom, she becomes unstoppable. Oh, unforgiveness is a silent killer of potential, and emotional baggage is the weight that slows divine destiny. When a woman holds on to pain, betrayal, or rejection, she may not realize that she is creating a spiritual blockade between her present and her future. The heart was never designed to be a storage unit for poison. Yet many carry bitterness like it's armor, thinking it protects them from future hurt, when in reality, it only keeps them from future healing. A woman cannot fully embrace joy while clinging to the remnants of disappointment. The soul becomes divided, part of her moving forward and part of her still trapped in the moment she was wounded. What many fail to understand is that unforgiveness is not permission for the offender, it is liberation for the offended. It is not saying what happened was right, it is saying that what happened no longer has the right to rule. Bitterness clouds discernment. It makes a woman suspicious of genuine love, doubtful of new opportunities, and closed off to the blessings she's been praying for. Past becomes her prison, and every new relationship becomes a repeat of old pain, not because people haven't changed, but because she hasn't released what was never meant to be carried this long. Emotional baggage doesn't just weigh her down, it reshapes her personality. She becomes defensive, guarded, or even numb. And slowly the beauty of her softness, her joy, her light begins to dim. Healing does not begin when time passes. Healing begins when truth is embraced. A woman must confront the pain, acknowledge the wound, and then surrender it to the one who heals completely. Only then can her heart breathe again. Only then can peace flow like a river through every corner of her soul. Comparison is a quiet thief that robs a woman of her divine distinction. When a woman begins to measure her worth, beauty, success, or timeline against another, she disconnects from the original design God gave her. Comparison makes her blind to her own grace. It causes her to despise her process, question her progress, and resent her uniqueness. She begins to see other women as competitors instead of sisters. Instead of celebrating their victories, she secretly mourns her own perceived shortcomings. This attitude does not just damage relationships, it damages her perception of herself. This God never intended for purpose to be a race. Purpose is a revelation, not a competition. No two fingerprints are the same, no two destinies are identical, and no two women were ever designed to walk the same path. Yet comparison creates an illusion that there is only one standard of success, one form of beauty, one definition of value. And so she chases a moving target, never satisfied, always anxious, always inadequate. The tragedy is not that she can't succeed. The tragedy is that she doesn't recognize she already has something sacred within her. When a woman spends her energy comparing herself to others, she forfeits the energy she needs to cultivate her own calling. She loses time, peace, and creativity trying to be someone else when God has only graced her to be herself. The cure for comparison is clarity. Clarity of purpose, clarity of identity, and clarity of divine timing. When a woman knows why she was born, who she is, and who sent her, she becomes immune to the pressure to compete. Her confidence no longer depends on what others are doing. It is rooted in what God has already spoken. In that revelation, she finds rest. In that clarity, she walks in power. The fear of being alone is one of the most destructive emotions that can attach itself to a woman's soul. It causes her to settle for relationships that were never assigned, conversations that drain her spirit, and environments that suffocate her growth. This fear is not about the absence of people, it is about the absence of inner fulfillment. Loneliness is not cured by presence alone, it is cured by purpose. When a woman has not discovered the purpose of her singleness, she will view solitude as punishment instead of preparation. The fear of being alone drives women into emotional attachments that are beneath their calling. It makes them stay in toxic partnerships, tolerate dishonor, and ignore red flags, all because the thought of being alone seems worse than the reality of being mistreated. But anything that costs her peace is too expensive for her destiny. She must understand that alone is not empty when God is present. Alone is not rejection when heaven is orchestrating protection. Alone is not abandonment when it is the season of development. God often isolates before he elevates. In the quiet, he shapes identity. In the silence, he speaks direction. In the solitude, he refines character. But if a woman rushes out of that sacred place just to feel emotionally safe, she will step out prematurely and enter relationships that delay her purpose. Her fear will become her trap, and the relationship she idolizes will become the burden she carries. A woman must come to the place where her own presence becomes her sanctuary, where she knows she is enough, not because someone said it, but because God declared it. It is in this spiritual detachment from the fear of aloneness that she finds her greatest strength. Not needing someone makes her ready for someone. When a woman over-identifies with her roles, she risks losing sight of her true identity. Roles are seasonal assignments that shift with time, but identity is eternal. A woman may be a wife, a mother, a daughter, a professional, a caretaker, but these are functions, not the foundation of her being. When her sense of self is completely wrapped in what she does for others, she begins to measure her worth by her performance. And the moment those roles change, collapse, or end, she is left questioning her value and existence. That is not how God designed her. God created identity before he assigned responsibility. Before Eve was a helper, she was a creation made in God's image. Before any woman becomes anything to anyone, she is first someone to God. But the world conditions women to find value in productivity, how much she can do, how many she can care for, how selfless she can be. Over time, this breeds silent exhaustion. She keeps pouring from a cup that is never filled, and when recognition doesn't come, resentment follows. Not because she lacks love, but because she has lost herself in roles never meant to define her. True power comes when a woman knows that even without a title, she carries value. Even when the children grow up, the job is lost, or the relationship shifts, she remains whole. When her identity is rooted in the unchanging truth of who she is in God, no season can dismantle her confidence. She becomes emotionally detached from needing a specific role to feel important. This does not mean she abandons responsibility. It means she carries them with clarity. She serves with strength. But she is not consumed by service. She gives with love, but she is not lost in the giving. She remembers who she is. The people-pleasing spirit is one of the most subtle forms of bondage, often mistaken for kindness, humility, or being a good woman. But at its core, it is a deep emotional insecurity rooted in the fear of rejection. When a woman lives to make everyone happy, she begins to betray herself. She says yes when she means no. She silences her convictions to avoid conflict. She reshapes her identity to fit expectations that were never part of her divine design. Over time, she becomes exhausted, not just physically, but spiritually drained from carrying the weight of other people's opinions. Living to please others is a form of idolatry, where the approval of man becomes more important than obedience to God. It's not about being helpful or cooperative. It's about compromising truth in exchange for acceptance. And any acceptance that requires the loss of authenticity is not worth having. A woman who constantly seeks to keep the peace at the cost of her own voice will eventually lose her sense of direction. She will become a chameleon, blending in everywhere, but belonging nowhere. And God cannot bless who she is pretending to be. Spiritual maturity begins when a woman detaches from the addiction to being liked, when she no longer fears being misunderstood, when she realizes that she was not created to be everyone's answer, everyone's friend, or everyone's comfort zone. The right people will honor her boundaries. The wrong people will be offended by them. But peace is not maintained through appeasement. It is protected by alignment. The moment a woman stops needing to be approved by others, she becomes dangerous to the enemy. She moves with clarity, speaks with truth, and walks with authority. Her identity becomes anchored not in applause, but in assignment. She becomes emotionally free and spiritually unshakable. A woman who carries an unhealed father wound or rejection issue often walks through life with an invisible limp, presenting strength on the outside, but struggling with deep insecurity on the inside. When a father is absent, emotionally distant, abusive, or inconsistent, it leaves a void that many women spend their entire lives trying to fill. That rejection becomes a lens through which they view themselves and the world. She questions her value, doubts her beauty, and wonders if she is ever truly enough. The wound speaks even when she is silent. It shapes her choices, especially in relationships, causing her to chase love rather than receive it. This emotional gap often makes her seek affirmation in all the wrong places, from unhealthy partners, toxic friendships, or overachievement. She may constantly strive to prove her worth, believing that if she performs well enough, looks good enough, or gives enough, she will finally be loved. But no amount of external praise can heal an internal wound. The problem is not what she lacks. It's what she still carries. And unless that pain is brought to God, it will quietly sabotage every area of her life. Healing does not begin by denying the hurt. It begins by confronting it. God is not intimidated by the depth of her pain. He is a father to the fatherless, a healer of broken hearts, and the restorer of stolen identities. When a woman allows God to fill the space her earthly father could not occupy, she begins to see herself through the eyes of heaven. She no longer needs to earn love because she knows she is already loved. She no longer fears abandonment because she is eternally held. That emotional detachment from rejection doesn't make her cold, it makes her whole. It liberates her to love from fullness, not from desperation. You were never created to live beneath your design, to chase validation, or to bow to fear disguised as love. The kingdom of God does not raise broken women to remain broken. It heals them to rebuild nations. You are not what you survived. You are not the names they called you. You are not the pain you carried in silence. You are the evidence of God's intention, the manifestation of divine strategy, and the embodiment of purpose wrapped in skin. The moment you choose to detach from every lie, every role that suffocated your spirit, every wound that shaped your worth, the moment you say no more, you give heaven permission to elevate you into who you've always been. Freedom is not found in doing more, it's found in becoming more. So stand, not as a woman begging for a seat, but as a daughter who knows she owns the table. Because when you finally detach from what was never yours, you make room for everything heaven has been waiting to give.